Citizenship are designed to unlock the wealth for the benefit of all Sierra Leoneans, which I totally get. And a lot of people are feeling like Sierra Leone is being greedy or they have high expectations.
All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Exposing Sierra Leone, our weekly live stream where we talk about the issues and items affecting Sierra Leone. As you can see, we're going to have a special guest today, and I'll be bringing her on in a moment. But before I do, I'll be remiss to say we're missing Admire today. She was unable to join the live stream, but she is here in spirit. So what is Exposing Sierra Leone? So it's a weekly dive into issues, the news, and the people shaping Sierra Leone and the diaspora. Each week, as much as possible, join us as we engage with professionals, journalists, various guests, and sometimes just myself and Admire as we explore ways to propel our country forward. Sometimes we'll have in-depth conversations and discussions. We'll do enlightening interviews, and we're here to uncover the stories that matter. So tune in to be a part of the conversation. So today, we are going to talk about the new pathway to citizenship and just the overall citizenship process in Sierra Leone and some of the changes that we're hearing from someone who is an expert in the field of genealogy and also who happened to have gone through the citizenship journey more recently. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest, Aisha Ladan. Aisha, what's up?
Hey, Joe, what's up?
Hey, so last time we spoke, we talked about the challenges with scamming on the continent. Today we are talking about citizenship and citizenship in particular in Sierra Leone, right? So I think, first of all, before we get into that, can you do your background? I didn't think I could do it any justice. So can you talk a little bit about your background? And then I guess I should introduce myself, which I didn't do already, but you introduce yourself first, please.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Aisha Abdulrahman, also known as Aisha Ladan. I am an archivist, I am a genealogist, and I'm a heritage traveler. In 2001 or 2002, I traveled to Sierra Leone after doing my ancestry test with African ancestry. And I did the mtDNA test, which follows your mom, her mom, her mom, and her mom. So my maternal ancestry connects to the Mende and the Temne people in Sierra Leone. So I was able to travel. I think we were there 12 days. And I got to learn about Sierra Leone, the history, went through the whole entire process and obtained my citizenship, and then was given the infamous passport by President Bio. So that's the part that a lot of people are interested in, is getting their passport so they can travel. But I'm a big advocate for, it's not just about the passport for me anyways. So I talk a lot about that. Getting your citizenship, I think it's a big honor. It's been a big honor of mine. So I like to share that with people a lot. It's to me, it's a lot more than just your passport.
Absolutely. And it was 2021, right?
Yeah.
Not 2001. 2000.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2021 is when I went. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. And so I guess I should give my background a little bit too. So I'm Joe Hatagwa. I am the founder of Authentic African. As much as possible, I try to go live with Admire and Sierra Leoneans Killing It to do this joint live stream weekly for both of our audiences to talk about the issues affecting Sierra Leone. As a Sierra Leonean American, which I represent every day on my wrist, as I always talk about, I do as much as I can to try to share the story of our country and what's happening in the country. But then the platform overall talks about Africa. So this is the chance to talk about specifically Sierra Leone. And then tomorrow when I go live on Mondays, I talk about Africa as the continent. So sometimes I interview folks who are living in Ghana. Sometimes I talk about all kinds of other things that are happening on the continent. So with that, I also got my citizenship in Sierra Leone through a different process. Of course, both my parents were born and raised in Sierra Leone. I was conceived in the United States almost 41 years ago. Yes, it's true. The grays and the beard show it. So, but I got my citizenship in Sierra Leone end of 2018 going into 2019. And so, I've been really a big proponent of those who can to get their citizenship. And so I want to talk about the different pathways to citizenship. So we just talked about two different pathways. So I do want to do a little bit of just kind of some background for folks who are not as familiar with what the different pathways are. And so we'll talk about that, and then we want to get into some of the recent updates and news. It seems like over the last 2 months, there's been a lot of news about citizenship, the citizenship journey in Sierra Leone, how people can get it, and what's been going on with that. So first of all, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 can get citizenship in Sierra Leone. So the first is naturalization. So living in Sierra Leone for at least 5 years, following the law and contributing to the country's development. Some people say it's longer. Some people say it's 5 years. I think, everybody has a different experience. Then there's by descent, right? Being born outside of Sierra Leone to a parent who was a citizen of Sierra Leone. That is how I got my citizenship. So I got it through the descent. So both my parents were born and raised in Sierra Leone, both had Sierra Leonean passports, and that's how I was able to get my citizenship. But it only needs to be one parent. I had two. You also have let's go back. You also have the African Diaspora Ascension, which is the way that Aisha and many others, at least I think the number is maybe 300 or 400 now, I don't know what the number is, of people who've traced their DNA heritage to Sierra Leone through a certified local tour operator who they've gone with. Now, at one point in time, there were 6 certified tour operators. I hear there's 4 or 5 now. I don't know what the total number is. But that's the other way that folks get citizenship. So we've talked about 3 different ways, right? One of them was the way Aisha got hers. One is the way I got mine. And then there is a new fast track or heritage nationalization that has come into the zeitgeist is what they say. And that is the fast track naturalization, investing $140,000 in a program that grants citizenship within 90 days, and the heritage nationalization, investing $100,000 in a program that grants citizenship within 60 days to people with African ancestry. So we're going to touch on the fast track, the heritage, and the African Diaspora Ascension. And so we'll talk about all 3 of those today, what we understand them to be, a little bit of the details included, and then our thoughts on them. But before we get into that, let me just double check to see if there's any questions, comments, concerns. Seems like Spear Warrior is here. Shout out to Spear Warrior, who also got his citizenship through the Ascension program. And then Z Giselle Cozart is here in the building. I think that might be a hand raised. If you have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments. Also, normally what I like to do is ask people if you can hear us, give us a thumbs up. Or just hit that like button, and then and just let us know where you're watching from in the comments so we can acknowledge you, those of you who are joining. Okay, cool. So I did a lot of talking just now. Aisha, I'd love to take it back to your citizenship process. Can you just kind of briefly give an overview to folks about what your citizenship process was? And then I think we can start to talk about where the questions are about how that's changing. But, it'd be great maybe to do a quick recap of how you went through your citizenship process, since I just went through mine.
Okay. So for mine, I've done genealogy as a hobby for probably about 20 years. And so I had always done ancestry.com, 23andme.com. And for my birthday, I was gifted Ancestry. I had whined and cried, kicked and screamed about the price. So someone got it for me for my birthday. I was so grateful. And after then, I didn't know, I don't know if their citizenship was an option. So I just got my test done. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I always wanted to know, as a genealogist, my goal has always been to trace which ancestor came here, how did they get here, where did they come from. And so having the results of my maternal ancestry actually says the Fula and the Jola people in Guinea-Bissau the Mende and the Temne people in Sierra Leone, and then the Kru people in Liberia. So after I those results, I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is really exciting. I shared it on my YouTube page, and I just started sharing a little bit more about other tests I've taken. And then when I found out that citizenship was an option, probably a year or two after I took the test, I jumped right on it. I was like, this is amazing. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And so when I traveled, I went specifically with Applicant ancestry. So as Joe mentioned, there are a couple of different tour groups that you can go with. You have to go with a certified tour group that's been approved by Sierra Leone. So I went directly with African ancestry. My tour guide was Diallo Sumbri. You guys might know Diablo from Ghana. He does a lot of the Beyond the Return stuff there. And so what I was told is African ancestry partnered with Sierra Leone, and that the only way to get your citizenship at that time was to go directly through African ancestry. So that's a question that a lot of people ask. So I have on my YouTube video, like it's a series of like 14 videos on the step-by-step process. So the paperwork that you have to do is your state background check, your federal background check, reference letters. What else is there? You have to write a letter asking and explaining why you deserve citizenship. And I think your birth certificate, and if you've changed your name, proof of your name change. So my last name changed because I got married. So you have to have proof of that, of why your birth last name is not the same as your current last name that you're using. And then you gather all those documents together and you give them to your tour operator. Your tour operator then does all their stuff that they have to do, which relieves a lot of stress on you. That way, when you get to Sierra Leone, everything is like bam, bam, bam. Everything's lined up. It's organized. They get everything like for your passport ready for you, so that when you get there, really, you're just there to learn about Sierra Leone. So we did some tours. We went to Bunce Island. We went to Tasso Island. We did our naming ceremonies. So if you are a Temne person, you can go to a Temne village and get a naming ceremony. If you're a Mende person, then you can go to a Mende community and get your naming ceremony. So for me, I am both Temne and Mende. So I did my Temne naming ceremony on Tasso Island. I was actually given the surname of the chief. And so he's like, you're my daughter, I'm adopting you. And then in Moyamba, I did my Mende naming ceremony there. And then kind of towards your end of your trip, you will have the kind of like, we call it the citizenship ceremony. To me, it's more like a workshop. You go and you learn about the history of Sierra Leone. You learn your rights as a citizen. You learn like the national anthem of Sierra Leone. They introduce you to the different like monuments and relics commission, all the different groups. Like, oh, if you want to start a business, this is who you might contact. If you want to buy land, or if you want to, some of the people had an idea of like beach cleanups. These are the people that you can contact. They didn't give us specific like names or contact people, but like this is the name of that group or commission that you can contact. And then they asked us like, what are some things that you see you can offer Sierra Leone? Like, what are some skills, some things that you see, like the beach cleanup? What are some things that you think that you can add? Because they were saying this was their main reason why they wanted this partnership with Sierra Leone, was to bring in skills that maybe Sierra Leoneans didn't have, maybe to train them, or for us to come and start businesses and things like that. And then after that, we have, there's another building you go to, you do your bioscan, you do your fingerprints and all that. They take a picture. And then I think the day before the final day was the actual ceremony. You swear in, kind of like you raise your right hand and you do a swear in front of the president as a group. And then you walk up, shake his hand, and he hands you your passport, which was like amazing because I've never met a president in my life. So I'm like, this is my first president I get to meet. And it's, you know, the president of the country that my ancestors are from. So even like right now, I get choked up talking about it because for me, it's like, it's a serious, like big deal. It's been a very healing process for me, especially because I see people are asking, do I have a genealogist degree or self-taught? I'll answer that in a sec. This has been something that I've been doing for years and years and years for all the different sides of my family. And it's not something that happens often. Is you might find like, oh, this is the plantation that my family was on, or this is where I think they're from, or you'll get a result saying you're
Right.
from West Africa. We already know we're from West Africa. That's not very helpful. Or you'll
Right.
say, I'm from Sierra Leone, but you don't know a specific ethnicity, which is why a lot of people have been asking me lately. I've been having to fill out things. What's your ethnicity? I don't put I'm Black anymore. I put like I'm Temi or I'm Fulani. And people are like, huh, what? Because I feel like it's an opportunity to educate people.
Mm-hmm.
Black is not an ethnicity. African American, it's not an ethnicity. That's not who we are. They call us that because they don't know where they got us from. So that's a whole nother tangent. But this whole entire process has just been very insightful, very healing, not only for me, but for my family. So I'm excited to share because I have now officially tested all sides of my family, all four. So I've invested a lot in getting DNA tests done for all sides of my family. So now everyone knows where we come from. And so that's the thing is not just for you, it's for whoever else is related to that person, that maternal line, or that paternal line. So I've tested my grandmother on my mom and my dad's side, and my grandparents on my mom and my dad's side. So anyone related on that in that way should know where we are from now.
That's awesome. You said a lot there. So a couple things I want to point out. You mentioned that you are part Crow, same. And also Mende, of course, as I mentioned before, same. Mende on my dad's side, Crow on my mom's side. So shout out to the fact that we have shared genealogy on either side. All right. So so you mentioned the process. You met the president. So to be clear, that was the process previously under the Ascension program, right? The one that we were talking about, the African Diaspora Ascension, or what is it? Accession program. Tracing DNA, Accession. Tracing DNA heritage to Sierra Leone through a certified local tour operator. And so I, unfortunately, did not shake hands with the president when I got my citizenship. I just got it at, what was it? I can't remember the building name, but it's the building in town. All right. So a couple things really quickly that came up in the comments, questions. So there's a bunch of folks joining that were saying where they were watching from. Sorry, I didn't get to you guys. Aisha was telling her story, but you guys, thanks for, letting us know that you can hear us. So a couple things. Zongo Native is saying they are Ghanaian citizen, and the results of their maternal DNA tests from African ancestry show that they have the Mende ethnic group. That's very interesting. Shout out to you. I'm also Mende, and so is Aisha partly. And then all the while I thought I was Hausa mixed Tem ethnic group, which, I mean, there are possibilities that you have all of them. There was a lot of mixing going around, right? So, and a lot of people have traveled throughout West Africa, right? So there's not necessarily, just the four that I know, or the five that I know, and just from my grandparents, and who knows where they came from before then, is Crow, Yoruba, Mende, Mandingo, Creole, right? So that's five. And so that's just from grandparents and great-grandparents, and there can be many more, so who knows? Yeah. All right, so with that being said, there was a question. First of all, so sorry, guys, I put 150K in the title, 150 in the title, but on the thumbnail says 150K. It's 150K, sorry, and it's really 140K, to be honest, so that needs to be corrected. My bad, guys. I was in a rush today. But you guys, you know, my heart's in the right place. All right, so to answer your question, Spear Warrior, we can get to that, and then we can talk about what we're hearing the shifts and potential changes are with citizenship through the Accession program. But do you want to explain how you were taught, how you got your education in genealogy or becoming a genealogist?
Yeah. So as I said, I've been a genealogist. Genealogy has been my hobby for about 20 years. So it started out as a hobby. So it started out self-taught. And then I went to San Jose State University, and I now have my master's in what's called library science and information technology, which can include courses that you take on genealogy, how to do genealogy coursework, archives, libraries. There's a number of classes that you take. So there isn't really a genealogy degree. You can get a certificate through the board certification of genealogy or something like that, where basically your peers look at your work and your reports, and then they say, okay, you're good, and they'll give you a certificate. So for me, my degree is in library science and information technology. So it focuses specifically on archives, which includes genealogy and historical records. So I hope that answers your question.
And it looks like over your right shoulder, there's proof of that. For those who you want to zoom. Was that your left shoulder? Is it your left? Okay, my screen is flipped.
So. My right.
Okay, it is over your right shoulder. Okay, yeah.
I don't know my difference from my right and my left. Yeah, on my right. Yeah, I have been in school probably my whole entire life. I just love to do research and I love to learn. So I've got a degree in business, I've got a degree in psychology, and then my degree in library science.
And there it is. So a couple things really quickly, and then I do want to talk to the changes that we might be hearing that are going on with the ascension process. But before we do that, there's a couple of questions, comments, thoughts. So Pro Woman seems to disagree and says African Americans are an ethnic group. We have hyphenated identities, just as someone who is adopted has birth parents and adopted parents. Okay, I mean, I think there's always conversations about ethnicity and what's the other one? I don't want to mix it up. Anyway, that's it, nationality, right?
Yeah,
so
we are Americans by nationality, but what I mean is African is not an ethnicity. So you have Africa as a continent, just like you have the United States. So I look at those as similar, as saying you're an African is like saying, actually, I won't even say that. So you have North America and you have Africa, are continents, but you have Ghana, which is a country. So Ghanaians and Nigerians are not the same. They are countries within Africa, but those are their nationalities. Even saying I'm a Ghanaian is not their ethnicity. You have Ewe, you have Ga, you have Hausa people or Fulani people that live in Ghana. Those are their ethnicities. So I think a lot of people get confused between ethnicities and nationalities. So that's what I mean when I say I'm not an African American, is those are just continents. Those are not ethnic backgrounds.
There you have it. Well put. All right. So Antonio Mice has an interesting question and thought. So I think we can both address this one. He says, unlike Ghana, why is the Sierra Leone process different, where you have to do a DNA test in order to gain citizenship instead of just being granted citizenship through the proper channels like Ghana? Now, let's not talk about proper channels. I will say this. There are a couple of different ways that you can be granted Ghanaian citizenship as well, similar to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone has more ways, it seems, to be granted citizenship. So they do not have an ascension option. They also do not have the other two options where you can do an investment by citizenship. However, they do have the naturalization if you have a parent born in Ghana, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the descent. They have the descent. Sorry, the descent. They have the descent option where if it's a Ghanaian parent who is a citizen of Ghana, you can get your citizenship. And then they also have naturalization. So if you've been living in Ghana for a certain amount of time. And so that naturalization was part of what they were doing with the groups that they gave citizenship, but they kind of fast-tracked it in a number of different ways. But no, so I just think they're more limited in the options, but it doesn't mean that that both of those options don't apply. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but if you want to add anything there, Aisha.
So what I feel like, because I've been to Ghana often, my daughter-in-law is Ghanaian and my son is working on his citizenship as a Ghanaian citizen through marriage. The way that I see it is Ghana is an example. I think a lot of people are following what Ghana has done. This citizenship thing with Ghana isn't new. People have been going to Ghana for years. Like we just heard about Marcus Garvey, throughout the news and the media. People have always been going to Ghana, and it's been the president who decides who gets citizenship. And I feel like that process is very similar today, is you have to show why you deserve citizenship. It's not enough to, I have ancestry there. You have to be traveling back and forth. You have to be investing. So Jay Cameron just did an interview with, I believe her name is Ivy. He just did an interview about how often he's been going to Ghana, Ivy Prosper, how often he's been going to Ghana and all the work that he's been doing. The same with Diallo Cumbri. Diallo's been living in Ghana for years. So now there's people who are just now coming in trying to jump on that. But there's people who've been doing the work on the ground for years and years. And the president is aware of who these people are. And I think that that's who he's looking at, is who's on the ground, who's been coming, who's been doing the work. Versus as Sierra Leone, and we'll talk about this because I think that the update to the citizenship program that Sierra Leone is doing, they're looking at Ghana, they're looking at what other countries are doing, and they're now creating new ways to get citizenship. So for myself, going through the DNA was kind of different, and Sierra Leone was the first country to do it that way. But I think that everyone has kind of looked at what Ghana is doing as an example of how it can be done. And I think that at the end of the day, it's really to boost the economy and to help grow the economy and to get people with different skill set to invest on the continent. And I think that Sierra Leone knows the history and the connection that people of the diaspora have to Sierra Leone. And so that was just their way of connecting us and through African ancestry to do it that way.
Great insights. So to get to some of the updates to the Ascension program, I keep saying Ascension, the Accession program that you went through. So I can give some anecdotes of things that I heard just being in this space and conversations I've had with folks. So first, let me say, there are many folks who are probably watching the live stream right now who've gotten their citizenship in the last 5 years in Sierra Leone, who have not stepped foot back in Sierra Leone, right? They mostly have gone to Ghana for different reasons, right? Many people have described some of the challenges, doing some of the things like buying land, starting a business, things like that, which more requires you to be on the ground and talking to folks, going to offices, where a lot of what you can find in Ghana is online. Right. So we're more of an analog system in Sierra Leone. Ghana has been getting better at digitizing and automating certain systems. And so I think people, for good reason, sometimes can be frustrated with some of the processes in Sierra Leone. What I do understand, though, is that from what I understand, the government and government officials, folks who've taken on the roles of, the different roles in government where you are you're touching citizenship, and have been hearing that folks are getting citizenship and not reinvesting or coming back to Sierra Leone. And I think that has been a point of contention, and some conversations have been had government level and with tour operators. And so there was a recent tour in November of last year. And that's after having only had one last year instead of two. So generally they would do this in April and in November for the Accession program. Last year in 2024, they went to one, and they did it in November. And many of those folks in November did not do the ceremony that Aisha talked about that she did, which at the end of it, you shake hands with the president, you have a photo op, and you're handed your passport. There have been conversations about having to do a second trip. And what I'm understanding is it's still fluid what the details are pertaining to how the Accession program will continue. Now, that's anecdotal, and that's what I've been hearing in the background. Aisha has been in this process and also is in different WhatsApp groups that I am not in. So from your perspective, Aisha, what have you been hearing about the Accession program? And did I mischaracterize, or is there anything that I said that is incorrect, or am I missing something?
No, I think that's definitely true. Everything that you said. So what I've heard is, what you guys probably all may be familiar with, is the Go for Gold program. So a lot of us were stunned. Those of us that already have our citizenship were like, what? Wow. Like, they're just you pay money and get citizenship? Because for a lot of us, it's deeper than that. It's not just about a passport and a citizenship. And then there was a second announcement where they have this, I don't even know what to call it. So it was like this article that was put out about a heritage program where you take your DNA test and you pay $100,000 instead of the $140,000. So the Gold for Gold is open for whoever. Pay $140,000 and I guess they give you your citizenship.
Right.
Whereas they have this other program now that was in that same article. And yeah, that's in that same article. You pay $100,000 and you also show proof of your DNA, but it doesn't say that it has to be specifically from any company. It just says, show your DNA, pay $100,000. So a lot of us were in those WhatsApp groups. So I'm in a couple of different Sierra Leone WhatsApp groups. One is a specific African ancestry group with all of us that got our citizenship. And then another is all of the citizens, not just from my tour group or that went with African ancestry, but all of the citizens who have gotten our citizenship this way. So I think it was a day or two ago, it was announced by African ancestry. And I believe this is coming from higher ups in Sierra Leone that they have contact with, that this article, this announcement, and you guys, there's a link there's a link to the PDF where you'll notice there is no like Sierra Leone government logo. There is not anything like saying it's official other than them saying this is official. So normally what I've seen on Sierra Leone documents is like our logo, you know, the Sierra Leone branding. So what I
Usually
was
up
told
here.
is, yeah. So what I was told is this is not from the same department, like the Monuments and Relics Commission that I went through, and that basically we should ignore this. This is not official, or maybe this is something separate, and that there's going to be more updates. And basically, those of us who have already gotten our citizenship, we've been told like this is a different program. They have their own agenda, is what they're calling it. And basically, it has nothing to do with us. So my takeaway from that is maybe this is going to be an additional way for people to get citizenship. But right now it's not clear and there's a lot of questions and people are stressed. I seen someone in the comments ask, when it comes to renewing your passport, are we going to be able to renew our passport? So I'm not sure if you're in the WhatsApp group. What we have found is there have been people that renewed their passport. As Joe has talked about, there are challenges getting back to Sierra Leone. I am one of those guilty people. I've gone to Ghana several times since I've gotten my Sierra Leone citizenship. It's just easier. I have more support there. I'm going to probably do a video. And I know Joe's talked about like, why are so many Sierra Leoneans in Ghana versus Sierra Leone? I am going back to Sierra Leone either March or April of this year. My passport doesn't expire until 2027. But I think like if you have you have to renew it before you have 6 months. So I'm going to go through the process of attempting to renew my passport, and see so that I can share with other people. Like this is the process. The other thing that I want to do is to see if my children can get citizenship the way Joe got his. So now that I have mine, I have adult children. Can they also get citizenship? So I know if your children are under 18, they can get citizenship through your testing and your results. But as far as over 18, I think it's a different process is what we've been told. But no one has done it yet. And at least if they haven't shared it with anyone. So from what I've been told is if you already have your citizenship, we can renew our passports online with VSL. So that's Visit Sierra Leone. They have a process where you send them your passport, you pay the money. They are there in Sierra Leone. They can renew it for you, or you can do it in person in Sierra Leone. That's the information that I've been given so far. So I feel pretty confident that if African ancestry and the Sierra Leone government is telling us that this new announcement has nothing to do with us, it's maybe some other something, that they're going to renew our passports. Someone was saying that it would look bad if they didn't, if they were like, oh, your citizenship is no longer valid. That's not going to show investors or new people. It's not going to give them confidence to invest in Sierra Leone if they're going to just turn right around and take your citizenship away from you, especially if you haven't done anything. But at the same time, I understand Sierra Leone's government we've given you citizenship. We've given you a passport. but what are you doing in return for that? You're going to Ghana and you're investing your money in Ghana. So I definitely see both sides of it. For me, what I have found, if you are interested in going back to Sierra Leone, you have to make connections. You have to find people on the ground like Joe. There's also Francis Momo, people that you trust that can help you and help you navigate. You have to build a community. So that's what I have in Ghana. I now can't make that excuse. I have to do that in Sierra Leone. And the only way is to make those connections, and you have to visit. You have to go often. It's not going to be like, oh, here's some land for you. Here's this for you. Here's that for you. It's not going to be that easy. One, because it's new. This is a new program. We're kind of like the first people doing it, and they're still working out the kinks. But also, they want to see that you're going to do the work, that this is what you really, really want.
Right. And nothing worth having comes easy. And that is especially true on the continent of Africa, and even more true depending on the country you're dealing with. So, when it comes to the country that I love and that I call home, it is one of those things that you have to know that it's just harder than other places to do some of the things that you would consider basic. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to really, really want it in order for it to happen. So with all that being said, I do want to say, yes, these two things are separate. And in terms of the information that people have, I think what Aisha just expressed was renewal of citizenship is so much easier than getting citizenship, right? Once you're already in the system, you already have a passport. And so the process that she talked about is the process that everybody who has a passport goes through. And I don't think there's a delineation really between those who've gotten their passport through the accession program or people who've gotten their passport through naturalization and others. Right. I think if you renew your passport, you renew your passport. I don't know if they're stopping people who are doing it. And then to the point, VSL has done a great job of figuring out how to work out a deal with the government that those who are remote, they set up a passport renewal program. I have attempted to do that for different people and with varying degrees of luck outside of VSL. So I know the VSL has something that they mentioned on their website about this. So, I would definitely check in with them to see how they do it. Because if you attempt to do it separately, it may be a little bit difficult. I was able to do it for an 85-year-old person who was not able to come in because that person was of that age. But when I attempted to do it for somebody who was much younger, that got denied. So I do think you probably have to go through a process like VSL, who's had relationships with multiple governments, right? And, they've been around for, I think, 10 to 12 years now, I think VSL has been around. So 10 years, I think it is. I think they just celebrated the 10-year anniversary. So they have relationships with different presidents, different political parties. So it really doesn't matter who's in power. VSL's process and everything that they do kind of seems to be fluid regardless of who's in power. Okay, so that's the accession program. And I wanted to talk to that because there are a lot of comments and questions and concerns about that. And right now, what I am told by people who are talking to these folks in government is that the process is still being worked out. It is a new person in this role, who's running this ministry, and they are determining how they are going to run this ministry. So it's a new person under the same administration, but the full previous all the ministries have been replaced. Many of them have been replaced. And so they just stepped into office, 8 months ago, whatever that time frame was. And they're doing a bunch of different things. And this is one of the things on the list, right? And so from what I understand, they are working on it, but they haven't given solid answers as to what the next steps are for new folks. Something that I've been told is those folks that came in November already may have to come back one more time to show their dedication. And they're still working out what that might look like. But I'm told it's likely that with that return, they'll probably get citizenship. But likely and probably are words that I'm using because I'm not 100% sure exactly what will happen. For those of you who want to do it moving forward, there'll probably be more information as this year progresses. So with that, I do want to get into the details of this fast track program because that is the title of the video, right? And again, my bad, I put $150 for Sierra Leone citizenship. I'm at $150K. So those of you who came here thinking it was $150, I did not try to clickbait you. My bad. That was a typo. And that will be updated by the time anybody's watching this as a replay. All of the replays on all platforms will have the proper title. But with that being said, so let's get to the details. I just had the article up and now I can't seem to find it. Of course, that's life. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna share my screen again. So here are the details that they express for the two. So the key features of Sierra Leone's new fast track option. So again, this is not from the Monuments and Relics group. However, and also I don't see any official documentation from government on this, as Aisha said, but this is what the article says, and it pulls out of that particular PDF. It says the CFG citizenship route provides two main pathways. You have the fast track naturalization, which grants citizenship within 90 days for a total investment package of $140,000, which includes all program fees, legal costs, due diligence, and documentation. Then they have what they call the heritage naturalization, which grants citizenship within 60 days to individuals with African ancestry for a total investment of $100,000. Applicants submit a DNA test report as part of their application. Now, this was the one that was concerning the accession folks, right? Because it was seeming as if this heritage naturalization was replacing the folks who did the accession. And you know, Aisha, that process, the accession is right around $4,000 to $5,000, right? Is that right? That kind of the process for that?
Yeah, it just depends on what tour group you come with. I would say between 4 and 5 is a good ballpark group, but that includes everything. That includes your flight, that includes your hotel, that includes any tours that you go on, that includes pretty much everything, your passport, everything. So.
Okay.
This I noticed that it doesn't require you to be on ground or to come to Sierra Leone. So that's interesting as well.
Right. So this is also interesting. And now I will say I have gone to a couple of Sierra Leone diaspora events where they've invited folks from like other countries to talk about different ways that they do citizenship. And that's not what the events were about, but one I've heard of, there's about 13 to 18 countries, it depends on what you say, but over time that either have a pathway to a visa or pathway to citizenship through an investment program. And you guys might remember the United States had a little version of that under the current administrations, the new administrations, previous administration. Some folks were being able to, you know, fast track their way to citizenship from Chinese nationals, et cetera. So there are many countries that do these off the books, on the books, different ways that they operate and allow it. America is a country that does it as well, just to be clear. But the numbers are pretty high. In this particular case, they also mentioned that both pathways let applicants include qualifying members for an additional $10,000 per dependent. Sorry. Eligible family members are dependent children under 18, a spouse, and a legal second spouse. Shout out to what countries allow that. Dependent parents of any age. Investors can apply for the GFG, citizenship route directly without getting permanent residency. Those who opt to obtain PR, permanent residency, and not citizenship in their application will have a chance to apply for naturalization under the framework in the future, but the government is still working on that process. Now, this whole thing is based around investing in gold. I know many people are very weary of these kinds of things, but there are some membership club access things that I don't totally understand, and I don't want to read this through. You guys can read the article yourself because I wasn't following, and I feel like if I read it out loud, I'm not sure I'll follow. I don't know if it makes sense to you, Aisha, when you've read this.
No, I don't know anything about the Go for Gold Club, and I guess I feel like that's what this is really focused on, is this Go for Gold program, and like a new way to invest in Sierra Leone.
Right. And I just don't know, you know, but this guy's based in Cairo, and he wrote the article. And so the official statement,
the names on the PDF, does those names look familiar to you? Because I guess
So let's
that's where he
see.
got his information from. Is he interviewed this Mr. Jason Black? I've never heard of him,
Not
so maybe he's
familiar,
one of
and he
those
does have a
new
Hotmail
people.
address.
Yeah,
And
but maybe
you
he's
know,
one
it's
of those new
been a minute.
people in there.
Maybe. I mean, +27. I'm not sure. But this is the press contact though, so I don't know. +27. I don't know what country code that is. I don't know if that's Egypt.
Mm,
Um,
right.
I don't know. Let's just do some quick research.
Yeah.
So
And I've just never seen Salone put out any government thing without the Salone,
okay, that's South
official
Africa.
logo or anything. Mm.
That's
That
South
was the
Africa.
other
Yeah, and
thing.
so yeah. So go ahead. Say what you were saying.
I was just saying I've never seen them put out any official, even just a press release without the Sierra Leone, like the logo and the official header. I've never seen this. And someone was saying in the comments that this is a fake. I've just never seen it. So I haven't heard them say it's a fake. I've just heard it's separate. But I've just never seen
Right.
like an official government document look this way.
Right. So what this could be is someone who has permission from the government to do this program, so
Yeah.
whatever government agency, and they took additional liberties
Mm,
of saying it's from the government because, as you mentioned, there's always the official seal
yeah.
on the upper right hand corners. You guys will always see it with the lions, right?
Mm,
That is not here. Every document that comes from the government has them, every single one.
wow.
And you notice that it's not there.
Yeah.
So they call out Marabio, the president. They also have quotes in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
From the
lot in
chief
here,
immigrant
but
officer. I don't know. I've never the chief immigration officer. So I guess that's the thing is the way the African ancestry has done it was through the Monuments and Relics Commission and the tourism, but not through immigration. So this had the chief immigrant officer, Allison Kane. I don't know how to pronounce the surname.
Alusine
Mm-hmm.
Kane. Yeah. So and look, and I think if we see any commentary from Alusine at any point in time, he'll let us know if this is real.
Yeah.
But I will also say the immigration office is where I got my passport, by the way. I couldn't remember the
Mm,
name of the building. But yes, I
okay.
went into immigration and I just got my passport renewed last year. So yeah, so you do that at immigration in town. So yeah, so I wanted to go through that and read that for those folks who were wondering what's going on and what we've been hearing. And since Aisha, you're in those WhatsApp groups, you're talking to folks, and I've talked to a couple folks, and I think everybody is a bit concerned. But it seems like there's been a little bit more clarity, but there's still more clarity to come. So I'm waiting to find out. Excuse me. I'm waiting to find out if this year they will do the citizenship program, the accession program, the same way they have been doing it, and potentially what changes might be implemented through that. All right, so there's been a lot of questions and comments about ethnicity and stuff like that. Maybe we can get to that before the end, but so specifically about the citizenship stuff, let's just get to some of the questions. So Haji Baz says, hey, Joe, those who got citizenship will have no problem renewing, but those who don't have it may have to pay the $100,000. Lucky all to those who have done it before. I think that this is not, we're not sure about that yet. I mean, that's not a official government document. So I think that's what a lot of people were saying. That was where their concern was. The Levy's in the building, just saying what's up. This is Sar from ATL. What's up, Sar? Sar is from Sierra Leoneans in Tech and Africans in Tech. So shout out to Sar Levy in Atlanta. I just did his podcast, 2 hours long, so we got to try to edit that. Sorry, I did a lot of talking. Okay, so just other folks talking about different things. Jamie Smith saying Creole people are primarily African Americans in Africa, or at least a portion of them, due to their blended heritage with Caribbean nations, particularly Jamaicans. Yes, and also many of them were freed, enslaved Africans. Many of them were on ships that were intercepted. So the Creole people is a mix of many different ethnic groups for
Yeah.
sure. As a Creole person, I just became aware of this over the last like 4 or 5 years. Zongo Native says, you mean you have to invest 150K to secure citizenship? I'm more interested in the oil and gas industry if you have any. That is for that particular program we don't know much about yet. That one that's been announced but hasn't been either denied or approved publicly by the government of Sierra Leone. Let's see if there's any other questions, comments. Okay, so WBG Sports and Fitness LLC is saying, what's the VSL website to renew your Sierra Leone passport? It is visitsierraleone.com. If you just Google Visit Sierra Leone,
I put the link.
it'll show up as, okay, the link is already there. There you go.
I put
Boom.
the link right under their comment.
Oh, how'd you do that?
I'm
still learning too. Okay. There you go. So there's the answer to that. Okay. So any other thoughts, comments on that you want to share, Aisha, before maybe we get into, if we want to get into some of the ethnicity related discussion that seems to be going on in the comments over the last like 10 minutes?
Yeah, that's it. I was just reading is it pro woman's comment. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that your opinion is very what's the word? It's a legitimate thing. I'm not saying that it's not at all. I'm just saying from a genetic position, as far as science goes, and by that definition of ethnicity, I do agree with you that African Americans, we've created our own culture and things like that. I'm just saying DNA wise, ethnicity, that's how ethnicity is determined. I also seen your comment to Jamie Smith in terms of the Liberia people. So I actually, because a lot of people like to debunk this DNA stuff and these tests, and they're like, oh, it's not real. So after getting my Sierra Leone citizenship, I actually found a fourth cousin via 23andMe. That's in Liberia. So, and the way that they're Vi people. So even though my DNA doesn't say I'm Vi, which makes sense because it's a cousin, it's not my direct maternal. Where they are from, they're actually from the Mamalu family, which are like one of the first presidents. So Elijah Johnson was one of the founders, or I guess you say first African Americans to return to Liberia. So that's my fifth grandfather. So I didn't know this until 23andMe DNA tests showed that we're related, but where they are is right on the border between Sierra Leone and Liberia. So a lot of people don't believe like that these DNA tests are real, and they'll take multiple tests. And I've heard people say, "Oh, I didn't believe it, so I took multiple tests." I had cousins take different tests, and you will find the DNA it doesn't lie. So those of us who have ties to the slave trade, our ethnicities are mixed. I'm like, I have ethnicity in Nigeria, Igbo. I have the Bemeleki people in Cameroon, or the Mbundu people. I have a lot of different mix, and that's because of the slave trade. So when I'm talking about our ethnicities, those are the things I'm talking about, is what Europeans would call tribes. And then you can even go further back, because from what I recently learned is the Mende people actually come from the people from the Mali Empire. It's almost like they broke up and they splintered off, and they started labeling people, as Pro Woman was saying, based on like, are the regions we're in or the languages that we speak. So oftentimes, sometimes these are not even labels that we've given ourselves. So I want to acknowledge what you were saying. A lot of what they're saying is true. But being an African, what I mean is that being African is not an ethnicity. Even if you're a Sierra Leonean and you live on the continent, you're not African. You live on the continent of Africa. You're Sierra Leonean by nationality, but that's not, even a Sierra Leonean is not your ethnicity. So there's many cultures, languages, and ethnicities in Sierra Leone. And as we are learning, people move and they travel and they intermix. So you'll have a mix. People will think, like Joe was saying, he just recently learned about Creole ethnicity. He's learning, he's got this mix. He's not just one thing. And I think that as a people, that is something special about us. Even if you live on the continent, they're learning that they are a mixture of things that they didn't even realize because of migration patterns. Someone also asked about the Hoplo group of the Mende people. I don't know. I haven't done the research on it.
Nor have I. So I have nothing to add there. All really good stuff. I think that was great education in the idea of ethnicity. Yeah, I mean, look, as you said, it's been a process of learning even for myself. I spent a significant amount of time saying I was Mende and Sierra Leonean. I mean, Mende and Creole.
Hmm.
And I've actually never done a DNA test from
Yes,
any
do it.
country, any company, from any company. So what I
Mm,
will do is I commit that I will do one from color, 23andMe, ancestry, African ancestry. I'm going to do all of them
that would be
to
fun.
see what, and then compare them all and see what
What
we
if we're
get. It's going to be
cousins,
an
bro?
interesting
What if
mix.
we're related?
We probably are. I imagine we are, at least through one of those two paths, right?
Yeah.
I seem to be related to everybody. Every time I talk to somebody, we find out that we're related somehow, some way. It's possible. It's absolutely possible.
I think it would be
I was
really
told,
good if more people that are from the continent, or if you have like parents from the continent, do these
yeah,
DNA tests, because then people like me can find you and we can link, like the cousin that I found that's from Liberia. And I
yep.
think it will dispel some of the myths that people have, is when you get deeper into your ancestry, you will find people on the continent that you're related to by blood, DNA. So I think the more that we connect on that level, I think that's going to be a really amazing like change, or so I believe something's going to come from that. So it would be very interesting to see like your test, and it will give people from the diaspora to see people on the continent that they're related to and make those connections.
There it is. Ghost McCall. I don't know if you want to answer that question, Aisha, because we can skip it, but I don't know if we want to go down that route.
I don't know if I'm a Pan African. Like I hear discussions about it. Um,
Yeah,
and my thoughts on interracial relationships. For me, I say each his own. So I have mixed race. Actually, what I will tell you is this: I have mixed race grandchildren. So my daughter-in-law is mixed race. Her mom is half black, half white. But what I have also recently learned is a lot of people think of interracial as a black parent and a white parent. I've never considered myself mixed race. I have 20% European ancestry. Of course, history tells why, but I've never considered
hmm,
myself mixed race. But from what I'm learning, I'm considered mixed race. And I'm like, but both of my parents are black. But no one is like really one race. So my husband's black. I prefer black men, but I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, it's, I guess you could say, from a religious perspective, we are souls, we are beings, and our outside is not who we are, it's our inside. That's how I feel. At the end of the day, we're people, we're humans, and to me that's what matters. um Now the pan-africanism, I feel like it's more of a political thing. I don't really have the knowledge to speak on it. I would consider myself a pan-african because I feel like we could potentially be one people, but we've never been one people. And I think that that's the misconception that a lot of people in America have, is they think all Africans are one people and they all get along, and but it's never been that way through history. So it would be nice, it would be great, but I don't know if it's possible, because that means people have to give up control. So
well put. I will touch on the Pan African piece.
yeah, you probably know
I'll,
more than I
I'll
do.
Well, no, I mean, so here's where I hear, because obviously with every title, it comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of things that people believe when they fall under a group, right? No group is a monolith anymore, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, Kwame Nkrumah was a Pan Africanist. Patrice Lumumba was a Pan Africanist. They would consider themselves Pan Africanists. Gaddafi would consider
Mhm.
himself a Pan Africanist, and also so did Marcus Garvey. Um, I think what most people describe as Pan Africanism today is coming together, and a United States of Africa kind of gets convoluted in the idea of Pan Africanism.
Right.
And I think that that's probably where most people agree. But
Yeah.
any group has so many different factions, belief systems,
Mm,
etc.
okay.
So
That that
to be
that
able,
that definition of it, I agree. I think it would be great
yeah,
if we could come together as a continent.
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was the United States of Africa, we'd be having very different conversations more about like we wouldn't be, we've been having very different conversations. So yeah, I mean, it seems as though folks like Ibrahim Traore is looking at all the members of the Sahel states. Seems like the East African Federation, the talks there are potentially moving in that direction. Um, as Aisha said, there are many different tribes in what has been created as countries over the last 100 and plus years.
Yeah.
And each of those tribes have had hard times getting along and getting together. So now we're talking about countries with different languages. And that would mean there would be one president of Africa. That would mean there would be one capital in Africa. And there are even different political systems across the continent. So there'd be a lot of agreement that would have to happen, and a lot of work has to happen for that to happen. I think there may be larger regional groups that form into potential countries eventually. It'll be very difficult though for neighboring countries like the French speaking and the British speaking already have issues just communicating, let alone moving towards a single system of government. We're talking about 54 or 55 recognized countries, depending on who you ask and how you're looking at it. And many of them today just they make it difficult to travel from one place to another. Like my Sierra Leone passport does not allow me to go to Kenya. Sorry, that's a lie. Does not allow me to go to, let's say, South Africa, by just getting on a flight. I have to go through the process of going to the embassy, getting a visa, and then going. Right. There are countries in Africa that you can land in with an American passport and get a visa on arrival, but you cannot do that with your Sierra Leone passport. So there's a lot of work to do before we can get there. But yeah, so that's the long way to answer my thoughts around the whole idea of Pan-Africanism and what people are talking about today. Now, on the Dr. Umar side, as I think I'm with Aisha on the whole, to each their own. I think I do understand the idea of the thought process in some cases around saying if you are for a group of people, it does make people have a hard time hearing you out if you do not choose that as a life partner. I don't know if that means it dismisses your ability to still fight for our causes, but it definitely makes people have challenges hearing you out. So if you're a person that's at the forefront of a particular movement and you partner with someone who's outside of the group that is the protected class in that movement, I do think that sometimes people might see it as it's disingenuous or not, it's outside of a movement to partner with someone. But there are many movements, maybe not ethnic movements, but there are many movements where people who are advocates and allies of that movement don't fall within the protected class of that movement. And so we do have to remember that. And so, I don't have any specific issues with it. I don't personally do it. By the way, I guess maybe I should put that out there. Not today. Not today. But I'll leave it out.
I've always been curious, and I have so my husband has a friend, and he's a Nigerian, but he's been in the US, I think probably since middle school or high school. And I was a little shy to ask, and my husband asked him because his wife is European. And what he said is the women, the Black women or the African women that he liked, that he would approach, they didn't like him. They were like, oh, he's this, he's that. But she is the one who liked him for who he was. And so he said that, and it really kind of opened my eyes, because me growing up, 80s, 90s kid, I've always kind of like looked at Black men like, especially like if you have locks in your hair, but the one on your arm doesn't look like me. So I've always just been curious as to like why. And so to hear his explanation and him saying, well, Black women haven't been interested in me, or the ones that I've showed interest in weren't interested in me. They didn't show that return of, interest, but this person did. So I found that interesting and genuine, but I think it also has to do with your lifestyle and your mindset and the way that you think, because you can marry someone with your same ethnicity that just doesn't think the way you do or have the same mindset as you, where someone that isn't of your ethnicity will have the same mindset or lifestyle and grow or have grown up the same way. So I feel like even your religious beliefs, I find it interesting when I see Muslims with non-Muslims, and I wonder, how do you navigate that? So the same as I do people who are of different ethnicities, and I think that they are of course going to have different challenges, especially if you are on the forefront and you're a Pan-Africanist or something. But I always wonder, like, how do you balance that? The same questions that these guys are asking is like, this is what I'm representing in the forefront, but in the background in my family is this going on. And it's weird is because I guess I kind of have like a small platform and I speak out about things. People have told me, they're surprised. They're like, oh, you have white friends? I'm like, my grandchildren are mixed race. Like, I don't intend to come off racist. I just maybe don't know how to sugarcoat things.
Sure.
But it doesn't make me hate anyone or not like someone because of their ethnicity. Like, I don't know. But I think those are difficult conversations to have, even within our own people. You'll have Black people say, well, I don't like Black people. Well, they're the different kind of Black people. There's those other kind of Black people. I think as a people, we have our own issues, and that's what we have to work on, is ourselves.
Well put. And I'll just add that I've lived many lives. So where I am today is not where I was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So if ever any photos come out of me when I was like 25, I'm just saying, all right? Things are different these days. Things are different these days, all right? So putting that out there, because there's a possibility that can happen. To be very clear, I've lived different lives and I'm in a different place now. And so, yeah, I mean, where I am today, this is where I am today. African is where that's who I date. Okay, so with that being said, I usually don't talk much about that, but today, since that question came up, and I felt like if I didn't answer it, it would be like saying that I'm omitting something. So I just felt like I should. Okay.
It's an interesting conversation that I've learned a lot of people are having on YouTube around these DNA tests and learning different things about themselves that they didn't know. Like, there's been racist Karens that actually learned that they have African ancestry. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, I've seen some of those videos as well. I mean, look, it's a controversial topic. That's why I am trepidatious about how I speak about it, and I'm very careful with the words that I use, because this does live on the internet forever. And we are in a live environment, so I can't edit out anything I say. So I have to be very careful. So I'll leave it at that. But moving on to some of the other questions. So Roots Farm, or his comments, Roots Farm says, Sierra Leone as a country will benefit more from citizenship by DNA accession route if the government was to create a sovereign wealth fund so that newly granted citizenships can invest into. That's interesting. I mean, Japan has a sovereign wealth fund, for example. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard, and I can't remember what the fund is now, but so I don't know if it's Japan. Sorry, it's Saudi Arabia has a sovereign wealth fund, and so like companies like WeWork, Uber, many companies have been invested in by the sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. Now, from what I understand, most of the wealth comes from the royal family there. And they have some stewards of that capital and figure out where to invest. They made a really huge bet on WeWork, which was a bad one, but they made also really good ones, and like Uber and many other ones. So that could be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because when you have a sovereign wealth fund, when it's a royal family, generally it seems as though those people are in power for the duration. When you have a sovereign wealth fund and you're dealing with different administrations, there may be different philosophies on how to invest that money, right? And so I tend to go the route more of public-private partnerships, but smaller private partnerships that sometimes deal with the governments, in some cases. So where like a government allocates a certain amount of land to certain groups of investors. Because I do think once you deal with different governments, a lot of things get canceled by the next opposing government that the previous one started. Happens very often. And so, and you know, the way the world works is we swing back and forth between left and right, or you know, some countries it's not left and right. Some countries it's more like who deals with the educated class versus those who deal with the grassroots movements. You know, and so a lot of times if one administration doesn't work for a country, or they feel like the masses don't feel like it worked, they move to the next one. And a lot of times those people who run those make decisions to cut ties with a lot of the partnerships that the previous administration did. I've seen it in many countries around the world, and including on the continent of Africa. And so I don't really like the idea of a sovereign wealth fund in that sense. I think more of like public-private partnerships where smaller funds are working with the government in some cases to buy land, maybe. That's my thought
Are
on that.
you
I don't know if
familiar with Jobo Max? Is that a good example of what you're saying? Like Jobo Max, I guess, has
Sure.
partnered with Sierra Leone government, and they have land and they're building like communities. And then people like myself, because that's one of the things I'm looking at is, do I buy into the community where they're already building? And I've had meetings with them where they say, well, if I buy land, they can still build the house for me on that land. But I can, from what I was understanding, is they have a deal with Sierra Leone government. They've bought land and they are building like a community there, and then people can either invest or they can buy a home within that community. Would that be an example of like what you mean?
Yeah, that is an example of it. And it basically removes the guesswork for you as a person who's going to go through the process of buying land.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I mean but then you're kind of tied into a specific community and the way they're doing things and their relationship with the government, and you need to just make sure you do your due diligence. Now, Jobo Max is in a good place because, you know, they've gone through the right means. I've met them as well. You know, that is run by a Caucasian individual, but he's been building around the continent of Africa. He's done some building and he's done some work. You know, he's lived in Sierra Leone, if I'm not mistaken. He's worked for a couple of like NGOs on the continent. And so he started this business, and I think they're building in Gambia and a few other places. But Jobo Max is one. They're an interesting company because, as Aisha said, if you don't buy in their community, they can still help you build elsewhere. There are other companies in Sierra Leone and other countries like TAF, which is another one. So there's a few companies like that that have bought land, have gone through all the proper channels, according to them, and it seems that they have. And you can buy from them to kind of fast track your process into an investment, right? So whether you want to buy and rent out the apartment, you know, that, or rent out the house that you have, that is an example of an investment through a public-private partnership, right? This is a private company who's gotten permission from the government to kind of basically say, you own this land if you buy it through me. However that process and that paperwork works. Make sure you have a lawyer on the ground review it just to make sure it's all good. But yeah, so that's an example. That's a good point. Yes. Let me see. I know we're over time. Maybe we'll take one or two more before we go. I mean, you're on the West Coast, right? But it's still, I think, you know,
Yeah.
we got stuff to do for the day, right? So, let's see. Okay, so this is one thing that was interesting. Pro Women had mentioned about PLO Lumumba suggests the Swiss model of decentralized government could work for United States of Africa. Yeah, I mean, a decentralized government, yes, yes. I don't. I guess I need to know a little bit more about how exactly that would work. But yeah, I mean, because I think you kind of have to have one overall federal authority, right? Like, I mean, the United States of America technically is 50 different countries in a country, right? I mean, not really, but a governor is technically a president of the state,
Yeah.
right? And you have this overarching federal legislation, and each of the states determine how they want to enact that federal legislation. So, for instance, when alcohol was decriminalized and also the prohibition was lifted, you'll notice that some states do not serve alcohol on Sundays. Some states do not allow hard liquor to be sold at gas stations. And there's all kinds of different rules, right? Cannabis legislation operates in a very similar fashion, right? So yeah, I think that the United States seems to be working to some degree. I think there'll be people that would disagree with me, especially those who watch these videos. But what I mean by that is because it was done so long ago and so early on, this system of federal and each state having their kind of little mini chiefdoms or whatever, with the governors of each state, is how they went about doing it. And yeah, I mean but it was done a while ago, and it was already predetermined as it was forming. This is different. You're now trying to get people to now conform to something new. So that would be difficult. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that, the whole idea of a United States of Africa.
I think in theory, I would say I'm a Pan-African. I just don't know like the details because I've just not dug into it. I just don't know how realistic that is, because what it comes down to is just people having to give up power. Like, unless, you have like the United States of Africa, but you have like mayors and governors and everyone's dictating their own. I feel like I don't think we'll bring about much change. It's gonna just be the same way that it is now. And then of course you have certain countries that don't really consider themselves African. So, there's that.
There is that.
That are on the continent of Africa, but we're not African. So yeah.
Great point. And I'll speak to that. Yeah, so some people have said sub-Saharan and then just make the northern part just part of the Islamic alliance in the Middle East, and just kind of say you're not Africa, but just the sub-Saharan part of Africa be Africa. I don't know if that works either, but I've heard people mention that as an option, because I think that's where many of the challenges are. And it's interesting, Kwame Nkrumah, as the story goes, he married the niece of the Prime Minister of Egypt. And many people say that was partially to try to unite sub-Saharan Africa and Northern Africa,
Right.
which obviously did not work.
So for me, being a Muslim, I'm even familiar with like Eritreans, Ethiopians, Somalians. They will say they're Arab because they speak Arabic. A lot of them don't consider themselves African. I'm like, huh?
Fair.
Okay. That's what you
fair,
believe.
Fair. I've heard that as well. Two more. Spirit Warrior says, avoid Royal Air Maroc for flight to Sierra Leone.
Oh, really?
If I'm speaking for Joe Hatagwa, who had a horrible experience, he says yes, avoid at all costs. That's what he says. That's what this guy says with 5 fingers. Who has 5 fingers and 2 thumbs on each hand? That's me. Yeah, that's me. I will say, I had my AirTag in the bag. So I knew where my bag was, but it did not arrive until days later after I arrived to Sierra Leone. And the numbers that they had given me, and I sat online for a while, and they told me, okay, this is the direct line. I'm giving you the direct line, the direct line. And that was never answered. 4 different numbers they gave me. I did all the research I possibly could. And then the other thing is, like, on most planes, especially if you have like a layover or you flying into a place, when you land, they allow you to use the restroom before taxi and takeoff as the plane is being boarded. Royal Air Maroc was like, no, and they were rude about it.
Wow.
And I was like, what about people? And I was on a flight with elderly folks who, maybe there was an emergency, and they said no. And because they took a long time to take off, we were taxiing for over an hour and a half with refusing people to use the restroom, which is crazy to me.
Crazy.
And so I say no.
I've never flown with them. I didn't hear your review, so I know not to even try it. Huh.
That's my review. The Levy say, well, yeah, today he would be, maybe not previously. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so I went to boarding school, PWI boarding school. Okay, from 5 to 18. That's where I learned to speak English mostly. All right. So just understand that. Okay. Pro Woman says, Joe, thoughts on Chief Fode in Sierra Leone as a tour guide for passport purposes. I met him once. He and I actually did an interview, and unfortunately, my laptop crashed, and so I never was able to put that interview out. I don't know enough about what he's doing in his process. Aisha's more in that world, so I don't know if you've come across him and what he's been up to. So thoughts, if you have any?
He's doing a lot of amazing things. So in his WhatsApp group, he has a nonprofit. They're doing a lot of really great things in Sierra Leone. I believe that there's a group there now. If I'm not mistaken, they just went, and I think he's there now. He's actually going to kind of like pre-check out the land for me and give me like his stamp of approval and give me his thought. I think I would trust him. I would trust him with money, to give him land, to give him money to buy land for him. I've spoke to him several times over the years. And I feel like as a woman, he's already kind of advising them go on. I think he's very protective of us as sisters, as women. So I vouch for him. Also, Francis, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. I will put a link. Francis, I believe, has started his own tour company. Francis is like my big brother. I absolutely love Francis, and it's just, he's a historian, he's a Sierra Leonean, and like I completely trust. He started a tour group, and he is going in March. I was gonna go in April or May. I may come in March just because that's when Francis is gonna be there. Francis has a lot of connections with the government. Oh, and he just jumped online. I would go, like, if I pick somebody, that's who I would go with. To be honest, I would go with Francis over African ancestry. That's just my partialness to him. I feel like if Francis wasn't a part of my group with African ancestry, he did a lot of our tours, it would have been a totally different experience. So for me, he was the highlight of my trip. He's a beautiful person. He's very knowledgeable, and he's very sincere. So that's who I would pick to go on any tour in with.
There it is. Is Francis the former VSL guy or works with VSL? Did he work for VSL? Maybe that's somebody else.
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway.
He's on. If you want to answer that in the comment, Francis, I don't know.
Okay, got it. So King Joseph is here from LA. It's been a minute. If I remember correctly, it's King Joseph that owns a gym in LA. If I remember correctly, you have to tell me. Some people watching from Denmark. Yeah. So okay. So since I made disparaging remarks about an airline, I can tell you what airlines I do fly into Sierra Leone through. I guess maybe I can say that, right? People are asking. There's some questions. Somebody mentioned Lufthansa lost their bags in Germany. This can happen sometimes. So what I definitely tell people to do is get AirTags, number one, if you're an Apple user. Android has Samsung has their own versions of it for Android users. So just Google it. If you don't want to give money to Amazon, find another way, but they're all available on Amazon. Easy to set up, just follow the instructions, easy to set up. And it at least tells you where your bag is. It can't do anything else but tell you where your bag is, but that's helpful. Because at least I knew when my bag landed at Lunge and when it got to town. And even though they didn't call me, I had a friend who knew someone who worked at Royal Air Maroc, and they were able to call them and say, hey, it appears that this person's bag has arrived. Can you check to see if it was there? And it was there. So I was able to go there and pick up my bag. So what airlines do I take to go to Sierra Leone? Brussels. So somebody said I don't want to fly through Europe. I do Brussels because I can shower halfway through. It's a long flight. So I shower at Brussels on the way to Sierra Leone. I shower at Brussels on the way back from Sierra Leone. That is the system I have in place when I fly back and forth to Sierra Leone. Brussels is an airline I've taken. I've also taken Kenyan Airways. KQ, I think is how some people shorten it. So I do take Kenyan Airways. I've taken Brussels. I used to take Air Senegal, but they also had an issue with bags coming in late and losing bags. So that was something that people used to talk about a lot, but it was always the cheapest and it was always the shortest route from New York, but they no longer fly to Sierra Leone, apparently. They had some issues paying their employees, et cetera, et cetera. You know how that goes. So yeah, Air France no longer flies to Sierra Leone either, but I heard a lot of people used to take that. So I usually take Brussels or Kenya Airways. Those are the two airlines I tend to take. United Airlines also operates in the United States because they're part of the Star Alliance. So sometimes they operate the flights. So you might want to look at those too. I don't know if there's any airlines in particular. Well, you haven't been for a while, huh? So I don't
I've
know.
only just taken Brussels. Yeah, I haven't been for a while.
Brussels.
There's a new airline that I was checking out. I don't remember the name. And someone in the WhatsApp group said, I don't know if this is true, that if you buy your ticket in person at the desk, that it's cheaper. So like
I've heard that too.
Yeah, I'm like, that's interesting, but isn't that like a last minute flight?
Unless you do it days before. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, I don't know. Yeah, I've heard that before too. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes if they need to fill the flight and it's not full, they may be able to get a lower price because it's all about supply and demand. They rather fill it with something than fill it with nothing.
Right.
So yeah, I think that probably can be true, like very, very last minute. But you also can be on standby for hours by doing that if you don't already have, don't already have it. And this is so King Joseph is somebody different from what I thought. Okay.
I love his comment. Showering.
Yeah. I'll leave that one alone. Ethiopian Airlines, they said Newark Airport to Atlanta to Sierra Leone direct to Africa. Okay, wait, hold on. From Newark Airport and Atlanta to Sierra Leone direct to Africa. But it's not direct to Sierra Leone, right? There are no flights direct to Sierra Leone, if I'm not mistaken. But Ethiopian Airlines, I've taken this too. So Kenyan, Ethiopian, I've taken both of those two. And I've taken Brussels without any issues. Yeah. So those are the ones I recommend.
Earth and Village asked about the internet. So I use Google Fi, and my internet, I had no problems with the internet in Sierra Leone. So my internet has been fine. I don't know who Joe uses. The other thing I wanted to ask, and maybe you can touch on this, Joe, as someone who's never been to Sierra Leone, that's different for me, is they weigh your carry-on. And I was not prepared for it. I was like, what? So I guess they weigh, like if I had a backpack and they wanted to weigh it, and then if it's overweight, they want you to pay for it. So I think that might be something you might want to talk about for people who have never had that experience of having to weigh your carry-on.
Yeah, so every airline is different, but generally it's like 12 kgs for both carry-on bags together. It needs to equal that amount total. So 12 kgs is almost times 2. So it's like 20 something pounds. But if you got a laptop and you got an extra screen and you got some batteries or you got some devices, it can get close to 20 pounds quickly. And you do have to pay extra on certain airlines. Certain airlines and certain airports don't weigh. So I've gotten unlucky and I've been lucky. What I found is when you travel with an elderly person, life is smooth at the airport. It's when, you're not.
It's the airline?
Yeah, I've had an airline ask me to do it in New York at JFK.
Okay.
I can't remember what airline it was. So yeah, it's an airline thing. It's not always it's not a country thing. It's an airline thing because each now most of the time the airlines follow the same rules in terms of how much their bags can weigh because they're all flying. They're operating similar style planes. So it's kind of the same across the board. But I think each airline has their own baggage fees, right? Their own cost of their fees. And what I will tell you this is anytime you have a bag, an additional bag that you're traveling with, you want to book that while you're booking your ticket or through the process of checking in, because they almost always charge you more when you pay at the counter for that additional bag than when you do it online. Sometimes $50 more per bag. So just keep that in mind. Now there was a previous question. I started with the second question first. What was the earlier one? There was 2 things you mentioned. Internet. Okay.
Internet.
Yeah, which by the way, I have it up on the screen right now. It's been a long day, guys. So to answer the question about the internet, no, okay. So what you said is Google Fi. True, Google Fi is great. So somebody put me onto the idea of using Google Fi as my phone carrier in the United States,
Same.
and Google Fi is great when you travel internationally for periods of up to 2 months or 3 months at a time, and you come back to the United States. Because they operate in a way that I don't know how it works, but they generally can capture the internet connectivity, and you can use you have unlimited Wi-Fi no matter where you are in the world, and they have pretty reasonable pricing to make phone calls around the world. The issue is if you move to the continent and you're living there longer than 3 months, they will restrict your internet usage. They actually cut it off. So that's an issue that I had with my former Google Fi number. So those of you who had my Google Fi number that I got in 2022, you'll recognize that if you message that number, it is not me anymore. So yeah, I mean, look, Google Fi is great as a US based US based phone carrier if you travel internationally and you're always coming back to the US. I will say this, having a physical SIM card versus having an eSIM is going to be better in terms of your internet connectivity and your phone connectivity. However, most devices, come on, light, most devices in the United States only comes with one SIM tray. So if you want to use two numbers, you do want to do an eSIM for your US number, and then you can operate with different physical SIM cards. So I have my Ghanaian SIM in this phone, and I have the eSIM with my US phone number. But that was something, shout out to Authentic African Branding, always, of course. That is something that is a challenge that I have with connectivity in Sierra Leone sometimes with the eSIM. So I will mention that. Now, it is also an older iPhone, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I do want to mention that can be a problem. But yeah, but that's the phone. As far as the internet connectivity at home, fiber is your best option at home. However, if power goes out, you need to have a backup power supply. But fiber is plugged in directly to the main internet connect provider. But Starlink has just launched, and everybody I know who has Starlink says it's the best internet you can have in Sierra Leone. It's only available in Sierra Leone and in Ghana, I think, in West Africa, or maybe Sierra Leone and Nigeria. But it's only available in 2 countries in West Africa currently. They just got they just got approved by the government, but they had been live in Sierra Leone longer than the approval from the government. And everybody I know who uses it says it's like just as fast as having internet in the United States. You have to have an unobstructed view of it. You have to angle it a certain way, and it has to have access to, the satellites in the sky, orbiting Earth, whatever. But yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it is the best option for internet connectivity in Sierra Leone. It can be anywhere from $60 to $120 per month, price wise. People are saying they don't like the expensive bag fees. Joe, I'm late to the conversation. Just wanted to say I'm disappointed in the new citizenship process. So Miss S is saying she was disappointed in the new citizen process. For obvious reasons, Go for Go program was shut out many due to economics. So what we said earlier is we're not 100% sure how real this is or how connected it is to at least monuments and relics. It may be connected to other departments, but monuments and relics is who has been overseeing the process of people getting the accession citizenship. So that's that. All right, I think we should probably wrap it up, right?
Yeah, you have one more. This is one talk about the charging adapters for new travelers.
Okay, fair. Yes. So this is the one I use. I need to have a store on Amazon. I'm not gonna tell you the brand because I don't have a store on Amazon right now. I'm not gonna tell you the brand, but this one has all the adapters. Yeah. So you get something that looks like this. Just look on Amazon. I buy these all the time, and so I can use this anywhere. So this is France and a couple other countries. This is US. This is UK. then here, any type of plug can plug into it. So definitely get an adapter.
In addition to that, you want to make sure that you have the power converter, because you don't want to trip the breaker if your power is too strong. So in addition to that adapter being able to plug in, you want to make sure that you have that power converter.
Yes. So good point. So depending on if you're moving full time or not, there are these things called step up, step down converters that are like, you can plug into those instead of plugging in directly into a wall. If you're staying in a hotel, generally you should be fine. But the reason why this matters is in the United States, just to get a little bit sciencey, science alert. In the United States, we do 110 volts in and out of our socket system. In Europe, they do 220.
Mm-hmm.
So you can fry your devices. I fried an iPhone and fried a laptop. So when I talk about my laptop crashing, that's what happened. 220 plus knocked that laptop out of commission. $4,000 MacBook Pro. So keep that in mind. So someone says I switched out my SIM to use AfriCell while I was in Sierra Leone. It was okay. Generally, it's fine. Okay, cool. Much needed conversation. Thank you, King Joseph. Appreciate it. All right, cool. So it looks like we've answered all the world's problems and questions. Before we go, where can people find you online, Aisha? You've been a wealth of knowledge today, and you have plenty more to share.
So I am Black Heritage Archivist on Instagram, and I am Aisha Ladon on YouTube. So that's where you'll find like my series on Sierra Leone, the whole citizenship process, my naming ceremonies, and all that. There's a whole citizenship playlist on YouTube.
Boom, there it is. And then, of course, if you're not aware, this again is generally a collaboration between Authentic African and Sierra Leoneans Killing It. We do try to come to you guys. We do try to go live, I should say, every week, Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or well, actually, we should say 9 p.m. GMT. So the time Eastern Standard Time can change between 4 and 5 p.m. based on daylight savings, because America decided to continue that dreadful process. If you're following on Instagram, go follow the other pages. If you're on Sierra Leoneans Killing It, head over to Aisha's pages, head over to Authentic African. If you're on Authentic African, do the same on YouTube and on Instagram and everything else we're live on. I know we're live everywhere. So you guys can just follow across everything. Follow all the YouTube channels and all of the above. All right, cool. I guess with that, thanks for watching, guys. See you all on the next video.
All right, guys. Bye. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.